We begin in Washington, where the impeachment trial of the U.S. President Donald Trump is about to kick off in earnest. For only the third time in American history, senators will have to judge the president for high crimes and misdemeanors and decide whether he should be removed from office. From around 7 p.m. Central European Time, the U.S. Senate will open with a debate on the structure and rules of the proceedings. Put it simply, the Republicans want a quick and condensed calendar for both sides to present their arguments. The Democrats would prefer more time, and they want to bring in fresh witnesses and evidence. President Trump is charged with abusing power by pressuring Ukraine to investigate his Democratic rival Joe Biden and obstructing Congress by refusing to cooperate with its ensuing investigation. But no U.S. president has ever been removed from office. The Senate is controlled by the Republicans, and a two-thirds majority vote would be needed for Trump to be convicted. His lawyers have called the trial a perversion of the Constitution, and they're urging the Senate to swiftly clear him. Well, Donald Trump himself is not in town today. He's at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. He's called the whole impeachment process a witch hunt.
That whole thing is a hoax. It goes nowhere because nothing happened. The only thing we've done is a great job. We have the strongest country in the world by far, and it was going in the wrong direction. We have the greatest economy we've ever had in the history of our country. And I'm in Europe today because we're bringing a lot of other companies into our country with thousands of jobs, millions of jobs in many cases. So that whole thing is a total hoax. So I'm sure it's going to work out fine. Thank you all very much.
Let me remind you, of course, that Donald Trump is only the third president in American history to face this process after Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, who were both acquitted. This is not a trial in the conventional sense, as Neil O'Reilly now explains.
With the permission of the Senate, I will now read the Articles of Impeachment, House Resolution 755. House Resolution 755. Impeaching Donald John Trump, President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors.
With those words, Donald Trump became only the third U.S. president to be impeached, the legislature invoking extraordinary powers against the executive. Impeachment was written into the Constitution by the Founding Fathers to enable Congress to accuse a president of a crime. It provides a congressional process for a trial and the powers to remove him or her from office if found guilty. Two specific charges are written into the Constitution: treason and bribery. A third accusation of high crimes and misdemeanors is also included, but the Charter doesn't define clearly what these may be. And it's under this third category that Trump is impeached, on accusations of abuse of power and obstructing Congress. It relates to allegations that the president put pressure on Ukraine to provide damaging information about his rival, Senator Joe Biden. The process begins with the House of Representatives voting to send articles of impeachment to the Senate. The upper house must vote by at least a two-thirds majority for the president to be removed and replaced by the vice president. Anything less, and he's acquitted and stays in power. Only two presidents in modern times have faced the prospect of impeachment. Richard Nixon resigned over the Watergate scandal before the process could be launched.
Presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
And Bill Clinton was ultimately acquitted over charges arising from the Monica Lewinsky affair.
How profoundly sorry I am.
Trump's presidency has been dogged by controversy from day one, culminating now in impeachment. These proceedings will determine whether he's out of office before his first term ends or survives to fight for a second. Neil O'Reilly, Euronews.
Well, right now we're going to listen to a senior U.S. Senator, the Democrat Chuck Schumer, who's just been giving a press conference. Let's have a listen to what he has to say ahead of that impeachment trial starting.
Instead of at 2 a.m. Well, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious. Why not? On something as important as impeachment, McConnell's resolution is nothing short of a national disgrace. And it will go down in history as one of the very dark days of the Senate, not living up to its responsibility in obeisance to the president, not to the truth. Leader McConnell promised his trial rules. You've heard this for weeks. Let's enact the same rules as the Clinton trial rules. He said we're going to get started in exactly the same way. It turns out the McConnell rules are not even close to the Clinton rules. And there are many places where that happens. Unlike the Clinton rules, the McConnell resolution does not admit the record of the House impeachment proceedings into evidence.
Well, that was the U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer there. Well, right now we can speak to Jay Gray. He's a correspondent with our partner channel, NBC News, and he's been following the proceedings for us, and he joins us now live from Washington. Well, thanks for joining us here on the program. Let me just ask you, of course, after so much waiting and anticipation ahead of this trial, we've heard from Democrats there, Chuck Schumer echoing the thoughts of the impeachment manager, Adam Schiff, already calling this out, saying it's not going to be a fair trial. Does this mean that this is all going to be over by the weekend?
Yeah, it really depends on who gets the upper hand in this opening day, Tokes. Good to talk to you as well. You know, the president from the Economic Summit has called this a hoax. Democrats complaining, but along much different lines. They say it is not a fair trial. They want the right to present witnesses as well as more evidence, more compelling evidence and documents in this case. They'll begin that fight today. And this opening session will probably define the tone for the entire process. It will be divided sharply along political lines here. And what you're going to see is them pushing to try and get 4 Republicans to join them in the fight to include witnesses, to include that new evidence. Some of the witnesses that could be included, John Bolton, the former national security advisor, Hunter Biden, the son of the former vice president and President Trump's primary competitor as we move toward the election here. But again, today is all about procedure. Oral arguments likely will start tomorrow afternoon, and then we will find out where the trial goes from there. So a very important day today.
And we'll be eagerly watching it and following the proceedings here on Euronews throughout the evening. For now, Jay Gray, thank you for joining us from Washington. Well, let's discuss the significance of this impeachment trial now, and I'm joined from Maryland by Alan J. Lichtman. He's a professor of history at American University, as well as being the author of the book, The Case for Impeachment, where he lays out the arguments for President Trump's trial. Well, thanks for joining us here on the program. Well, as we've been saying, this is only the 3rd time in U.S. history that a president has gone this far in terms of the impeachment proceedings. How does this case compare to the previous trials of Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton?
It's nothing like it. First of all, the charges leveled against Donald Trump are far more serious than the charges leveled against Andrew Jackson or Andrew Johnson or Bill Clinton. Johnson was essentially charged with violating a civil statute that constrained his appointment powers. Later, the U.S. Supreme Court said such constraints are likely unconstitutional. Bill Clinton was charged with covering up a private consensual affair. Donald Trump is being charged with selling out our national security, with undermining our democracy by shaking down a foreign power to help him cheat in the upcoming presidential election. And indeed, it's a nation, Ukraine, that is in the forefront of Vladimir Putin's aims to expand the Russian empire. This is all totally without precedent. Moreover, in both previous trials, there were witnesses, there were documents. In fact, in the Johnson trial, there were 41 witnesses. And of course, in the Clinton matter, every relevant witness had already testified before independent counsel Ken Starr. President Clinton did not block them. In fact, Clinton himself testified.
Isn't it, correct me if I'm wrong, this trial by U.S. senators is, as everyone says, is meant to be a fair system. But already, even before it started, we've had both sides denouncing the process. So what can we read into that going ahead to the presidential election later on this year?
Well, the vast majority of the American people want witnesses and documents, according to a poll just released by CNN. But you got to understand Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader. He cares nothing about principle or precedent. This was a guy who held up a Supreme Court appointment by Barack Obama for a year without even giving it a hearing. He only cares about dismissing this as quickly as possible with as little damage as possible to the president, the GOP, and his leadership. That is the be all and end of it. That's why he has violated even what he said about following the Clinton rules when you had witnesses and you didn't have proceedings for 12 hours into the wee hours of the morning. It just comes down to, will there be 4 senators on the Republican side willing to put principle above party, as many Republicans did in the Watergate scandal? And this is much worse than the Watergate scandal, which only involved domestic matters, not the national security of the United States.
Now, you're known, of course, for correctly predicting the results of 7 of the last 8 elections, if I'm right. Briefly, if you can, how are you calling this one, this impeachment trial, as well as the elections?
It's actually 8 of 9 or 9 of 9 because I got the popular vote right in 2000. Right now, this election is too close to call. On my 13-key system, it takes 6 negative keys to count out the incumbent Republicans. They're down 5, including scandal from impeachment. So you would need 1 more to count them out. But a lot of things can happen between now and November. We know in the age of Trump, things can change overnight. And I guess I would be absolutely shocked if this trial was little more than a whitewash with Republicans voting to acquit the president. But if it's not a fair trial, the American people aren't going to buy Donald Trump's argument that he was totally vindicated in the Senate. No, he was whitewashed in the Senate.
History professor Alan Lichtman from the American University, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us here on Euronews Now.